Hi, Pat O'Connor, Blackwood Family Enterprise Services, back with another series of questions to Tom Deans. This series deals with transition and the whole process of one generation letting go and going to the next generation, getting that next generation prepared. So, having some questions for Tom, and again, his experience in speaking with so many families, what best practices he might suggest for us.
Tom, in your first book, Every Family's Business, one of my favorite stories was the one where you were asked to come in and see the family, and you met the business owner who was in his 70s at the boardroom table, and maybe talk a little bit about that, and in that vein of the challenge of letting go for that founding generation.
Yeah, I've well, first of all, I love that story because it reminds us that things have changed in this country. It used to be that the whole transition of a business took place at death. That's the way it went down. That was the oldest page in the playbook. The business owner would semi-retire at 65, work for 5 to 7 years, and then statistically, that business owner would die at 72. The shares of that business would then go to mom. She would have a heart attack or a stroke a couple of years later trying to run a business that she maybe didn't understand or know or didn't like. And then the shares would come down to the kids. In equal amounts, by the way, because there was a 50% chance that there was no will. So the provincial laws would thrust brothers and sisters into business together as equal partners, and it was a disaster. But nevertheless, at 72, we had our answer. Well, now, and coming back to this story, the funny part of that story is when I walk into that boardroom and that 72-year-old is there and starts to tell me a little bit about his business, I said, hang on, why not invite your son in and we can have this conversation together? And then, of course, he looked at me and he said, I am the son. My 95-year-old father will be here shortly. We're not dying at 72, Pat. We're dying much later. This is the good news. But think about it. We have business owners in their late 70s and 80s and 90s who are not dealing with the transition of the voting shares. It is not something that should happen at death. It should happen well before death. And that's really what the questions in my book, Every Family's Business, are trying to address. It's the questions that I know as an advisor you use to start these conversations to find out whether or not there is a buyer in the house. Is there a buyer in the family for that business? Yes or no? These questions seldom ask themselves. They usually require someone like yourself to bring that family in a very structured way, to have a family meeting in a safe, neutral place, to engage the family, to seek clarity around the transition of their most important asset, their family business.
Tom, often we're working with families where the rising generation, the 20s and 30s, are concerned that their parents don't have a will or estate documents. And it's a tricky subject to bring forward to mom and dad or grandma and grandpa. Any tips or thoughts you might share with how the next generation might approach that conversation?
I've never been asked that question. I'll tell you and there's a really practical answer that often eludes people. We often think that estate planning, that we always die in order. Like old people die first, young people, we die sequentially. I know lots of people younger than me who have died, who have predeceased their parents or grandparents, lots of tragedy. And it's heartbreaking. Nothing says that we die in order. Listen, my parents have a copy of my will, power of attorney, and healthcare directive. I have a copy of theirs. Our children have a copy of our documents. In fact, when our kids turn 18, Pat, I don't know if you know this, we buy them their first will at 18. On their birthday. They're very disappointed, by the way. They're hoping for cars. They get wills. Very, very, very disappointed children. But that being said, they're on the hook for keeping those documents up to date. We spend in our family meetings time explaining them that that's their job. I just think that this is something that doesn't happen by accident. We need these documents in place. And I think that the likelihood that they're going to have these documents crafted by a competent lawyer. Please do not go to an office supply company for a will kit for $20. We're talking about your entire life's work that we're talking about transitioning. please reach out to a qualified advisor like yourself. You know who the best estate planning lawyers are in your cities that you work in. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Reach out, get some proper advice from someone who knows what they're doing.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciate those insights.